Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I have another reading vlog. I'm very excited for this little reading project. Honestly, I'm just excited doing any vlogs because I've been reading a lot more than I have been in the past few months, and I have the reading energy, the energy to read, and I'm just really happy. But as you can see from the title or the thumbnail, we are going to be reading short works of fiction. It doesn't necessarily have to be categorized as novella, but anything under 200-ish pages would be fine for this vlog. I already have a set of books picked out, pulled to the side. I won't read all of them. I try to read 5-ish books per vlog, and I have a little bit more than that. I already kind of showcased some of these books in my previous vlog, the genre reading vlog, but I'll show them again. Here's the stack of books that I am currently looking at for this vlog. But before I get to these, absolutely I do have to read this one e-arc that I got. This was the inspiration for this vlog. This is Automatic Noodle by, is it Annalee Newitz? I forgot the author's name off the top of my head. I believe this comes out in August the 5th, and this is from Tor.com. I'm honestly shocked that they gave this art to me. I have not really been on NetGalley all that much in the past few years, so I just updated my account and I was like, let me just request 2 things, so if I don't get one, maybe I'll get the other. And I got this one and the other one, but that's a whole other book I'll read at another time. But this is a short work. I like Tor.com's the stuff that they put out, those novellas that they put out. This book is about a group of robots who get turned on, and this takes place in the aftermath of some sort of war, and they start a noodle company. It sounds very cozy and adorable. I believe that their shop that they open is starting to get review bombed. That's all I know. It sounds adorable and the cover looks so cool. In general, I mostly have more success with these cozier, cutesy sci-fis, so I'm thinking I'm gonna enjoy this one. This for sure is gonna get read. This is the whole point of the vlog. I have 2 classics on the TBR. I have Carmilla by Joseph Sheridan Fanu. This is the more and more popular vampire novel classic that came out before Dracula. I believe we follow a woman who's very mysterious, and there's maybe a case of obsession. I know the sapphics like this one a lot, so we'll see if I enjoy it. Yeah, this is not even 150 pages. I do have another classic. I'm mostly reading this for another purpose, but this is The Great Gatsby, obviously by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I don't really have to go too much into it, but I do want to read, I believe Nevo has another Gatsby inspired retelling that I really want to read. Nevo also wrote a book that I've really loved within the past few years called Siren Queen, so I thought if I read one of her other works that's inspired by The Great Gatsby, I might as well just reread The Great Gatsby, because it's been a year, no, not even a year, it's been since high school since I read The Great Gatsby, so I could use a refresher. I'm not going too deep into detail for these books, so if I read them then I will elaborate on them. But then I have And Then I Woke Up by Malcolm Devlin. This is one of the first library picks for this vlog. This is a horror. I don't know too much about this, but I believe that our main character is at this rehabilitation facility and he's one of the cured, whatever that means. But the cover's kind of scary and trippy. This one looks a little thicker than your average novella, but the font size is big and so are the margins. This is actually translated from Japanese, which is perfect because August is, I think, Women's Translated Fiction Month, something along those lines. Like I said, Japanese. This is The Forest Brims Over by Maru Ayase. I believe this is about a woman who is the subject of her husband's work. He uses her as inspiration, and then she starts growing leaves and roots and stuff, and instead of getting her help, he's like, wait a minute, brain blast, I will write a book about you and keep you maybe locked in a cage or something. He's just using her, right? She's his muse and he uses her. Sounds very weird, weird fiction. And then I have The Lies of the Ajungo by Moses Ose Utomi. This is a first in a series. I don't know if the other books in the series are also novellas or if they're novels. This is a fantasy. I believe our main character is trying to find water for his mother, something along those lines. It looks like a desert setting, which I love desert settings. I think also from Tor.com. And then the last book on my TBR is More Than Human by Theodore Sturgeon. This is, I think, published in the 1950s. I think it is an older work of sci-fi. The author was born in 1918, so I'm assuming this is a bit older. And I think we follow a group of people who have extraordinary abilities, and they're kind of seen as the next step in the human evolution. So this could be go either 2 ways. This could be an interesting take on humanity, or a critique on eugenics, but this is also published in the 50s, so it could be pro eugenics. I don't know, you never know with these like older sci-fi dudes. This is a stack that I'm looking at. I probably won't read all of them. If I do, that would be great. If not, that's cool. But I think the first book that I'm going to tackle would be a fantasy, because that is my thing. So maybe this one we'll start with. So thank you for stopping by. I will check in another clip. Hello, it is currently like 7 in the morning, so like excuse the harsh like artificial light. I don't have natural light right now, it's still coming up, but you're like on a stack of books, so that's why we have a weird angle. I don't have like a stand with me right now, but I did finish The Lies of the Ajungo by Moses Ose Utomi. I'm sorry about the mispronunciation. I thought this was a really interesting narrative about lies and power. I don't remember exactly what I told you about this, like the actual plot, but we follow a young boy who's trying to find water for his people, but mostly for his mother, and he goes on this journey, this kind of like coming of age story. He's about 13. I don't know if I would say that this is YA necessarily. There were some darker moments, but I do think that like someone younger could still read this. I think it was pretty effective in like the story I wanted to tell. There were some very like nice moments writing wise, especially towards the end, that I really liked. Wonder how more effective the story could be, or just like how much it could have resonated with me more if this was like told in like a novel form instead of just like a novella. It is fairly short. It's not even 100 pages. Maybe I'm just like greedy because I like reading fantasy from like different cultures. Like we get a lot of like European inspired fantasy, but this is, I believe, West African, so maybe I just wanted more, but that just might be me. I still think the story was effective in the length that it was told in, but I would have liked to know more about some of like the magic system and stuff. But this is the first in a series. I don't believe that the next one continues immediately after this one. I looked at the summary for the next book in the series, and it takes place like 500 years after the events of this one. This particular story following this character, I think his name is Tutu, his story is like completed and done with, and I do think it was a good story. A story about a hero, story about a young boy, story about a people. I liked it. I think it was good. I don't know if I would buy a physical copy for myself, but I do like the actual like narrative, and I would read the next ones and borrow them from my library. As for what I'm reading next, I decided to start the arc that this entire vlog was inspired by, which is Automatic Noodle. I started this last night, after almost immediately after I finished this one, because I wanted to keep reading something, and I like it so far. There is a little bit of like technical sci-fi robotic jargon that I just like don't know, but so far so good. The characterization of these robots is starting to come through. I only read like 12 pages of this. I think the novella is like 130, so it's a little bit longer than this one, but sorry, that's the ice maker. Yeah, we'll see how it progresses. And I've said this before, but I do, in terms of like cozy stuff, I tend to actually really enjoy more cozy sci-fi than fantasy. I don't know why. Most of the people who live in this house are gone. My brother is still here, but he like never leaves his room, so the house is mostly mine for the morning. So hopefully I can like chill, put some music on, and just read and read and read. And hopefully I'll have this vlog up by the time this arc that I'm reading is released, which is August the 5th. It's currently August the 2nd. We'll see what I can do in these few days, because vlogging for me is a little bit of an endeavor. It's a little bit time consuming. So ignore this mess back here, but I am in the middle of Automatic Noodle. I'm really enjoying this. I wanted to give an update because there's already some things that I really want to talk about. First, it's I mentioned that it's kind of cozy-ish, and that's not completely wrong, but it's not uber cozy. It's not like cozy in the same way that like Legends and Lattes is like super cozy, but it is very charming. I love when an author can do charming really well without like bothering me, because you know sometimes too sweet is like a problem. There is 4 robots, and they're all so distinct. I mean, getting characters in general can be tough, even more in like a novel. This is a short story and it's a novella, and the author's doing so well bringing these robots to life. They are all robots, they're not human at all, and I just have to commend the author for that. I kind of knew that I was already gonna like something like this because this is the type of sci-fi that I've enjoyed before in the past. Quaint, charming, about humanity. That's always something that I know I'm gonna get when like the story is about robots, is you're gonna have like a story about a story about humanity, and seeing these robots just want to have a life for themselves. I love that. Some themes, freedom is a thing. I see a lot of parallels between our history and the things that robots are going through right now. This takes place after a civil war between California and the United States. California is now its own nation, part of the UN, and part of that deal is that they have to give freedom to a certain type of robot that essentially has like human emotions and stuff. And one of like the lines that we got already is, it almost seems like humans gave us freedoms just to take them away. And I feel like that in itself is just something that is so present today, but it does mirror the aftermath of our civil war and how we did give freedom to enslaved individuals. But obviously, just because they were free doesn't mean they had like the best life ever. In fact, it was pretty much just as bad as it was before. Something else that I really enjoyed about this book and novellas is when an author can obviously give us a little bit of world building. They can't go on and on because it's a novella, and there's that balance that you have to find. I think this author is doing it well, because while the Civil War aspect is not the most important thing, it's obviously like important to the story and important to these characters. One of our robots was like a military robot. The author is sprinkling in just enough information about the backstory, about the world building, that it's not heavy-handed, but it's also giving me enough that I'm not like, question mark, what about this, how does that make sense, blah blah blah, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not left like with questions as I'm reading, because that's something that happens when an author doesn't give the proper world building in the proper places. I'm like, wait, how does this work if XYZ? And I'm just like questioned. I have like tons of questions in the middle of my reading, and it's kind of like it, you know, when you have too many questions, then you can't enjoy the book. I think the author's doing a good job of like giving me enough information that I'm not like, you know, the fucking Riddler over here. So far so good. I would like to buy a physical copy at this point. We'll see how I feel once the story is over. They have not yet started the ramen restaurant. That's like their goal, is to start a restaurant that they can like work for themselves. So I did finish reading Automatic Noodle by Annalee Newitz. I really enjoyed this. I don't know what it is about cozy sci-fi that's just so much better crafted, I feel, than cozy fantasies I've read in the past. It could just be subjective, obviously, but I've had such a good time with this one. Let me know if you know any like cozy sci-fis. I think I would love to get into that genre more, that subgenre. Everything I said before still stands. I would love a physical copy of this. I think one thing that the author did do a lot, and it was maybe a little on the nose, but I didn't really mind, is the author does use a lot of real human strife, and does use that for the robots. And I know that some people sometimes don't like that, and I completely understand why, but because of the subject of this book being about like optimism and making your own like a life for yourself, I think it fits. I think the very obvious one was this does take place after the Civil War. Another like mirror that I thought was really nice to read was one of the robots has like a feminine torso that was put on her by her last employers, and she doesn't want it anymore. She's been subject to like sexual harassment before, so she wants to get her like fake breast tissue removed. It's not like real human breast tissue, it's like artificial. She wants to get it removed, and the robot that she goes to get it removed is like, do you want me to put like cool like LED lights that like sync to your emotions like on the scar, or the seam as she calls it, to like show off her seams? And she's like, yeah, sure, why not? And that's probably something that people who've gotten like top surgery have experienced. So little instances like that. So yeah, I really enjoyed this. This comes out, I don't know when this vlog is coming out, but this comes out August the 5th. I would recommend checking it out. It's adorable. I think I would give this like a 4-star rating, because I do think that we kind of sped through the conflict. There was like a review bombing on their like storefront, whatever you want to call it, by like people who really don't like robots, who are like robophobic, if you want to call it that, which normally I wouldn't mind because it's a novella, but I thought the setup was like really well done in its pace, but the resolution wasn't as well done. I do want to say that I did get a book package today. I already opened it, so I can't unbox it for you, but I got the Southern Reach trilogy. I know there's technically 4 books, maybe a 5th on the way at some point, but I was looking for books 2 and 3 like on Pango or Thrift Books, and I just thought to just get the whole bind up. I got it from someone on Pango. I read the first book, Annihilation, semi-recently, and while it's still fresh in my head, I want to continue on without forgetting anything. So this is gonna go in like the book haul pile. I do have a book haul up. It should be up by the time this is up. I'm already accumulating books for the next haul. So as for what I'll read next, here is the stack that I have. I am going to immediately take out More Than Human by Theodore Sturgeon, because I just finished reading a sci-fi, so this is going to go at the bottom of the pile for now. I am currently reading classic that's not in this vlog. I'm reading Emma right now, so I thought I could pick up either The Great Gatsby or Carmilla, but I mean, I could read 2 classics at the same time. There's like nothing wrong with that, so this is not necessarily out. I did finish this. I could read a horror. I could read And Then I Woke Up by Malcolm Devlin, or I could read translated fiction because it's currently Women in Translation Month, where you're encouraged to read translated fiction from women. It doesn't have to be fiction though. I think nonfiction counts as well. So I read a fantasy, I read a sci-fi, so I think we'll go with horror. So I think this takes place in a world where there's some sort of plague that like affects people's reality, and our main character Spence is one of the cured living at some sort of rehabilitation facility. It sounds weird, like it just sounds like one of those like weird books. It's a little over 150 pages, which I mean, what do you count as like novella, short work? I consider this like a short work novel, right? Like that's fair. Yeah, I think I'm gonna read this one. Hello, why did I talk like that? Hello. So last night I finished And Then I Woke Up. I was meaning to do like a mid-read like check-in for this one, but I just didn't. I forgot because I did have some things that I wanted to say about like halfway through. Well, first of all, things that I had problems with. Some of the writing stuff was a bit odd. There was a few things that I didn't like. He had these like asides that like I didn't get. They were like 2 or 3 times. I don't know if you've ever seen like an episode of like Family Guy where they're like talking and then they cut to like a little skit and then they cut back to like the main storyline of the episode. He did that like 1 or 2 times where he's like talking about like someone in the room with him, and he's like, but this is like a mental conversation he's having. So I'm like, are you actually talking to the guy that you're talking about, or are you like having a mental episode with us? I can't tell, nor do I really care. There was a few moments like that. There were some like cultural references that like I don't know how notable they'll be in like a few years. For example, he references the blue, black, white, gold optical illusion dress that made the rounds on the internet a while ago, and then he also referenced the Laurel Yanny like audio that audio meme, I guess. So yeah, just like a little few writing things that I personally didn't like. Not a big deal, I just thought I'd mention them. This is one of those horrors where things aren't always gonna be explained properly. There were some things that were happening in this book that I'm like, how does that make sense? But then I stopped myself and I'm like, but not everything has to be like explained like from beginning to end. I think that's okay. I don't want to give like the whole plot away because it's a very short book, so you can get through it pretty quickly. I wasn't sure how to rate this because I feel like there's nothing too wrong with it, but I think 5-star ratings are such a big emotional thing for me, so I think I'm gonna stick with a 4.5, which is very good. If I continue to really like chew on this experience, maybe it'll go up to a 5, but right now I'm at a 4.5, and I know that might seem kind of like unfair that I don't feel like this is a 5-star, but again, this is like my rating, so who cares at the end of the day. But I really like this. I think the ending in general really like sealed the deal for me. The questioning of what is our reality, it kind of reminds me of this like lecture that we had when I was in university, and we were talking about a few Greek philosophers, like how do you know what you see is real. It reminded me of this other conversation we had in university where the whole like I think therefore I am type of thing. It was very trippy, it was very psychological. If you're going in this for like a zombie book, it's not really what you're gonna get. I think zombies like how this was like pitched. You're not totally gonna get that. There were some like darker moments and grim moments, which I mean you might expect from like a horror novel. Also, look at the cover, this is like terrifying. I think this was supposed to be like a worldwide phenomenon. We're only following this character, I think he's like British or something. I found the way that his government decides to deal with this catastrophe very like interesting and odd. Obviously you would think that like the government would just like kill people who are like infected, and that is something that happened. Again, I'm trying not to spoil too much because there's not a lot of like movement in story here. It's mostly like psychological horror, but there's also some other efforts to like save these people. I think they called it like compassionate something, Project Compassion, something along those lines. The author also like kind of played with like not alternate realities but alternate truths, which I found really interesting. There are moments where he's like, so this is what happened, and then we'll have a line break, and then he'll say, well, this is what actually happened, and then there'd be another line break, but this is also what happened. And it's like, what? But that's, I think, part of like the point that he's trying to like drive home, is that like our character thinks he's cured, and we might think he's cured, but to the people who are not cured, he is not cured. And which cured person is right and wrong? Because our reality feels right, but to the people who are not cured, whatever that means, their reality feels right. It's a very trippy experience, which I really enjoyed, that kind of like mental gymnastics. So I would recommend this for sure. A 4.5. We'll see if it goes higher, like the longer I've been apart away from this reading. That really helps me understand like my ratings for a book. Almost immediately after that, I did start reading The Forest Brims Over by Maru Ayase. I decided because it's Women in Translation Month, might as well pick it up. Again, this is Japanese translated. I'm liking it so far. It's very surreal. It's very like odd. I feel like I've read a few East Asian translated books. I think I've read one Korean translated book, and that one was also odd. I feel like oddness is like the genre that gets translated a lot from East Asia. This book is about a woman who is like her husband's muse. She's also much younger than him, like 12 years I think, and she starts turning into like a tree, a forest. Like she starts just growing plants. But we see this from the perspective, at least in the first chapter, we see this from the perspective of her husband's editor, and he's just like watching the relationship, and he's like, this is very odd. I believe this book is going to tackle gender expectations and honestly like the emotional labor and like the physical labor that women do for their partners. We also see that with the editor so far. Like he does not treat his wife well either. So I'm really excited to continue this. It'll sound like a good read, and again, don't read a lot of translated work, so I'm glad that this was like a motivator for me. So I will check back in later. I also started posting a little bit on TikTok, so keep that in mind. Why do I update in like the worst lighting ever? I only have like a single lamp, so this is the best lighting you're gonna get from me. But I did finish The Forest Brims Over by Maru Ayase pretty much in a day. Like I started it last night at around midnight-ish, and I finished it like an hour ago, like at 8:39. So it took me less than a day to read. Overall, I would say I had a good experience. I still need to like sit with my thoughts a little bit. This is more magical realism, literary fiction, obviously Japanese magical realism, literary fiction. I had mostly a good experience. So yeah, like I said before, this woman turns into a tree, essentially a giant forest in her bedroom, and her husband uses like her condition to like write a story, but it becomes a lot more than just like about this couple. They're obviously at the center of everything, but we don't even read from the couple until like the last two chapters of the book. We see their relationship through the eyes of like an editor, a woman who's like one of the man's students. He's also like does teaching when he's not writing, and another like junior editor. And we see like their relationship and this man and how he uses people for his storytelling. And I found those chapters really interesting because I think the author was guiding the reader to her point in regards to like gender expectations in Japan, and I really liked it. And we really got to see like this man's problematicness worst word to use ever, but like his like problematicness when we finally get to his chapter and like his perspectives on everything and how he treats people. And then the last chapter was the wife's chapter, And that one was kind of a letdown. I'm gonna be completely honest. It was kind of a letdown reading from her. I'll hold the book up. Reading from her because I'm laying down, sorry. Her chapter was very on the nose, which I found odd because like the rest of the book, I thought, like I said, was leading the reader to her like thesis, her points. But then the wife's chapter was very much like, why do you use me for your writing, and you always take advantage. Like it was very like, I'm just gonna tell it as it is, which felt kind of jarring since the rest of the book was a little bit more like nuanced. Like they straight up just like start talking about the Bechdel test in the last chapter. So it wasn't the greatest note to end on. I thought the ending was like, you know, those like magical realism type endings, which was okay. I was worried that they were gonna do like one of those, it was an all a dream type of thing, but they didn't. I don't know if that's a spoiler or not. It's not. Yeah, I have to sit with it a little bit more, but I just thought I'd let you know that I finished it within like a day. As for what I'll read next, I was thinking of reading The Great Gatsby, but I don't like the edition that I have. I know that's kind of like a silly excuse not to read it, even though I want to, but I'm gonna pick up Carmilla, which I've been wanting to. I'm gonna probably read a bit more gothic stuff this like spooky season because I want to, and I think this is like a nice start since it is fairly short. I hope it doesn't take too long. My copy is a little over 100, and it's been edited by Carmen Maria Machado, who I know is like very popular. I still haven't read her work, but yeah, I think this is the book to end on, which is like a good note, I think, because I've been wanting to read more classics. Peace. Okay, so I do have an update. I am really enjoying reading Carmilla. It's been so fun for two reasons. One, in general, I just haven't been having a ton of great success reading genre books. I mean, I've had a good time with the books I've read in this vlog, but in general, this entire year, reading genre fiction has like not been like eating for me. Like I have not, it hasn't been great. So I have been trying to put more like lit fic classics into my reading to see if I'll get something out of that. And this is obviously a classic. It's not the most dense classic, but I think this is a great book to like get my feet wet and like read a bit more older works. It's very short. I know it was originally published alongside some other like short stories, but I'm having so much fun just like trying to think a bit more critically about what I read, which you can do with any book, but I've obviously like been like tabbing and stuff. I'm only like on chapter 5. I really like the writing that I'm seeing. I really like the storytelling that I'm seeing. And again, you can do this with any book that you read, but with an older work that the writing is not as modern as it could be, you do kind of have to think a bit more, use your head a little bit more, and I'm just having so much fun. As far as the story goes, I am really liking how just like odd and eerie it is, having this like weird woman like show up on your doorstep. Well, it's actually a group of people, like weird people show up on your doorstep and like drop off this girl, and our main character Laura already has this like weird connection with her. And I don't have anything like too much to say story wise right now though, but I mean, it's just a good experience for me. I will come back in when I'm finished and then wrap up this vlog. So I finished reading this. I finished Carmilla. I had a good time reading this. Like I said before, I think the most that I got out of this was engaging with the text as critically as I could. It is fairly like, it is a short story. It is fairly bare bones. It's very like straightforward. There were some moments of writing that I really appreciated from Sheridan. I really like the way that he was talking about the relationship that grows between Laura and Carmilla, and how Laura is just like very interested in her, and she's like very like taken by her. And if you wanted to be more conservative, I guess you can say it's just like, oh, she's like a really pretty girl that you want to like be like. But at the same time, the way that she talks about certain instances since meeting Carmilla, it's very like obvious, it's very lesbian. Like it's very like this girl's like into this other girl. There's like one moment, and I thought it was really funny, where Carmilla or Laura's talking about the dreams that she's been having since Carmilla has come to like stay with her. And you know, some of the dreams are kind of like scary, and she feels very anxious, and she sees like this black mass at the foot of her bed. And then there's also one dream where she feels kisses on her neck, and I'll just read it to you. She says, "Sometimes there came a sensation as if a hand was drawn softly along my cheek and neck. Sometimes it was as if warm lips kissed me longer and longer and more lovingly as they reached my throat, and there the caress fixed itself. My heart beat faster, my breathing rose and fell rapidly, then came a sobbing that rose into a sense of strangulation that turned into a dreadful convulsion in which my senses left me and I became unconscious. Carmen Maria Machado, who is the editor, she wrote in the footnotes, if this isn't an orgasm, I don't know what is. Which, like, tea, like, this is very, I mean, come on, look at it. Look at it. I really like that. Those are probably the strongest points of the book for me. It does go pretty quickly. It is a short story, but I enjoyed it. It ended pretty quickly because I'm like a fantasy lover in the year of 2025. I wanted more. I want to know more, but obviously we're not getting any more. So I will just have to like stick with all my Carmilla inspired retellings, which I'm sure there are a few. But again, this was a really good experience for me. I obviously tabbed the shit out of it. Here are all the tabs. I will wrap up the vlog in the next clip. Also, I'm using a back camera now, and I have one of those like screen sharers. Hopefully the quality is better at the very least. Okay, well, it's time to wrap up this vlog. I want to thank you so much for being here. As a quick reminder, I read 5 books. They were all shorter novels, novellas. The first book I finished was The Lives of the Ajungo by Moses Ose Utomi, and I gave this one 3.5. I thought this was a fun like hero narrative story, coming of age novel. I would continue on the series. After that, I read Automatic Noodle by Annalee, Newitz. Cozy sci-fi, really enjoyed it. Really fun, 4 stars. After that, I finished And Then I Woke Up by Malcolm Devlin. I'm sticking with a 4.5 on this one. It is not quite their favorite read, but it's still pretty good. I really enjoyed it. Then I read And the Forest Rooms Over by Maru Ayase. Again, I would recommend this one. It is Women in Translation Month, so maybe give it a shot. And overall, I did enjoy what this book had to say about gender roles, gender expectations, and like abuse, I guess you can call it that. Still really enjoyed it. It was a nice like literary fiction novel. And then I'll finish up the vlog with Carmilla, which I enjoyed. I wanted to take in as much as possible and read it slower. I typically don't do that much tabbing and annotating for like a first time read, but I knew I wanted to challenge myself. It's not a particularly dense book, and it's not like incredibly nuanced like some of these other classics, but still it was a good experience for me. And as far as the story goes, I still liked it, and I'll give that one a 4. That is the end of the vlog. Those are the short reads. Let me know what you think about any of these stories, any of these books. I'd really like to hear what you have to say in the comments down below. I will link my social medias down below, as well as some far more important links. Feel free to like, dislike, comment, or subscribe, or do neither. It's all cool with me. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. I don't actually have the stack of books that I read because I already turned them into the library except for Carmilla, so I'm just gonna hold up another stack of random short reads for the thumbnail. My bad.